So we use a lookalike audience on our website, and we can get more into this if you want, but we're targeting people that are like our best customers. So the way we do it is when someone signs up for the ad, they hit a page that's like a welcome page, and we fire a pixel there to track that now they've become a customer. And initially, we were just retargeting or setting up our audience based on those people that had put in a credit card and signed up. But then what we saw is if we had a wave of bad people sign up, we were all of a sudden getting a wave of worse people that were based on the bad people. So we changed our strategy, and so now we fire off triggers or events for the Facebook pixel based on when someone is adding content and inviting users in Trainual, because then we know that they're active, we know they're actually using the system.
I'm Shaina. I love dogs, I trip a lot, and I happen to have a knack for making pretty sweet videos for businesses. But the more videos we made, the more questions I got about how video and other content can be leveraged to make a bigger impact in their marketing. I mean, 44% of marketers say that producing content is their biggest challenge, yet content marketing is 62% less expensive than outbound and produces 3 times more leads. Now, I know a lot, but I certainly don't know it all, so I made it my mission to talk with content kings, queens, and bosses to learn as much as I could about crushing content marketing, and I'm taking you along with me. Welcome to the Content Coalition. All right, hey guys, we are here today with Chris Ronzio, the founder, CEO. What's the title?
Founder and CEO.
Founder and CEO, that's right, okay. All right.
Own it.
Samesies, I like it. Of Trainual, getting your business out of your head. You've had multiple businesses over the past. We go way back. I've known him for a very long time. But first business was doing game footage for sports.
It was an event video company. It was called EVC. So we did youth sporting events all around the U.S.
Awesome. And so he did that, and then he had Organized Chaos. Organized Chaos is still with us, correct?
Yeah, so Organized Chaos is kind of on hold right now because the current business, Trainual, originated out of Organized Chaos. So it's like Organized Chaos had a baby, and then that baby grew up to be really attractive, and now we just want to focus on that baby. And we kind of cast the rest of the business aside for now.
Say love you, my friends. Life is cruel. It's cruel sometimes. So tell us about Trainual. What does Trainual do?
Yeah, so Trainual is a simple platform, like you said, to get your business out of your brain. So as you're building a business, it gets complex, and there's more products and services you offer, and you hire more people. And the way that most businesses fail is when those people just aren't doing things consistently. They're not doing things like you used to as the owner. So you go from learning how to do something yourself to having to delegate it to other people, and Trainual is the step in between where you can document all those things that you do and make sure they're crystal clear so everyone does them the same way.
It's awesome. We use Trainual, and it's been amazing. Like being able to put everything on a platform and just know that it's there, not like in some random Google Drive folder that maybe somebody knows how to get to. It's been a game changer. I love it.
Cool.
Going through the platform was fun to see him pop up on videos. He's like, hey, quick tip on this page. I was like, oh, this is very fancy. It's fun.
Content everywhere.
Content everywhere. So that's why I was so excited to talk to Chris, because Trainual's new. When did you guys launch?
January 2018.
Okay, so right now it is January 2019, so we are at 1 year. And Chris has had multiple businesses, been heavy on content, but what I was excited to talk about today is how he implemented the stuff that he already knows with content and put it into a startup.
Yeah.
And how that like changed the game based on like the other businesses you had that maybe you didn't do as much content.
Sure.
So like just the big overlying question, like how has content helped in your growth?
Well, the decision to start Trainual and to focus on Trainual, content was a big part of it. So going back to Organized Chaos, my consulting firm, we were doing kind of management consulting services. We were telling people what to do. We were being hired to help streamline all of their operations, and we were getting paid for that time, paid for that service. But what we were doing was really giving them content. We were giving them expertise, and we were just doing it one-to-one for a really high dollar amount. And so as our architecture, our infrastructure grew and we hired more people, it was becoming more expensive to work with us, and the businesses that we could help and touch were getting smaller and smaller and smaller, or larger and larger and larger. We couldn't make the kind of impact we wanted. So the turning point for me was, how do I take all of the experience, all of the information, all the best practices, and instead of charging for that as consulting, how do I give that away as marketing content to promote and amplify and scale a product, which is Trainual. And so that was a massive shift, and content was a big part of that.
Awesome, awesome. So what have you guys implemented content-wise for, like, clearly it's a part of your operations piece, but as far as like launching the business, how did you use content like from day one?
Yeah, so let me go back before we even launched the business in January of 2018. a few months before that, I knew we were starting to rebuild. And so going through the rebuilding process, I wanted to document it kind of like it was a reality TV show or something, you know? So I started posting these like cryptic messages online, and I'm working on something, and I'll tell you what it is soon. And you know, you want to get that vibe going, of the excitement going. So we put up a landing page that was like, a new version's coming, subscribe here for updates. I would send out these little weekly email blasts that were just kind of from my desk, what I'm thinking. Years before that, I had a weekly email where I was suggesting tips, and so I was always kind of doing that content thing. So then I hired a photographer. That was a huge step for me, because I had never put myself out there visually. You know, I was writing, I was doing that, but I could not take a picture. Like if I tried to take a selfie, I would take like 50 different ones and then delete them all and be like, well, we'll try again next week. You know, like I was just not a visual kind of communicator. And so I hired a photographer to kind of follow me around town once a week. She would take her camera, she'd follow me to meetings, we'd go to coffee shops, we'd go to client meetings, we'd sit in here in this office, and then we took all those pictures, hundreds and hundreds, or probably thousands of pictures, and I finally had this database of imagery to go with the message that I wanted to say. So I started just on Instagram, simple, putting out an image a day of something with a message that I wanted to say. Then I started doing Instagram stories to get comfortable with video, and just putting, you know, here's what I'm doing today, here's what I'm working on today. And it was amazing how much interest there was when you can just be raw and vulnerable, and this broke, or here's a problem I'm having, or here's a cool idea I had, and oh, I guess that was kind of stupid. You know, like if you can just like get out there and say things. It was mostly for my own practice, but that was the story for the 3 months or 4 months before we launched Trainual.
And this was on your personal brand pages, things like that.
Yeah, personal brand. And so the company pages, the landing pages, we were collecting interest, but then sort of funneling that through to my personal brand. Because when we launched this, I wanted the story to be here, not just it's a new building that popped up on the street, a new commercial establishment. It's like, it's a new startup with a story and a real team of people behind it. So let's introduce you to those people. And so we had this, you know, great imagery, the photos and videos and all these, you know, 100+ different live stories we had posted, and all of that was a lead up to our big launch event. So it was like a content steam engine or something that was really starting. Should I keep going?
Yes, keep going. I'm loving this.
So then January we did a launch party, and we thought, what's the best way to get the word out there about this new software? Why don't we have a big event and invite everybody that we know, and we'll go to a hotel here in Scottsdale, and we'll invite media, and we'll bring our photographer, and we'll put the big backdrop behind us. And you've got to realize, you know, of course we wanted to sell a couple plans or tell people about the product, do some demos, but the real reason we did that was content. We wanted to have imagery, videos, and photos from that event so that we could make our tiny little launch party in the corner of this hotel look like it was a real thing that we could blast out to the rest of the world. Yeah. So you can leverage content and media to really amplify what's going on, even if it's just a small gathering of you and your friends.
It was a bigger than small gathering of friends. It was a nice event.
There were cocktail tables.
There were cocktail tables. It was fancy. So awesome. Okay, so that was like leading up to launch.
Yes.
So it was collect, basically front load as much content as possible. Mm-hmm. And then once launch happened, like how did that all get distributed?
Okay, so launch happened, and it was kind of like we had pre-scheduled posts. I use an app called Later for social media posting, was how I was doing it myself. And then it was just we were signing people up. And then for the weeks after the sign-ups, you know, we were very operationally focused for a few weeks after launching. And then it came back to like, okay, how do we get the message out there? And so the next thing we did was podcasts. And so we went on this kind of PR binge of researching all these different podcasts and all these different you know, shows and radio shows and anything that we could possibly get on, and just sending them inquiries. And my brother was doing it, and I was doing it, and our operations manager was doing it, and we got like 40 of these podcasts.
Some big ones too.
Yeah, some really good ones.
Right.
And so being on those shows, I think the first one I did was such a cluster of just like the internet didn't work and it's fluttering in and out, and like I forgot to grab the power charger in my computer. You know when you're watching your battery tick down and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope this interview ends in like 5 minutes because otherwise the battery is toast. Yeah. Like all those problems were happening at the beginning, but it was such great practice to just get out there and repeat the message. So it's really all about reps. You know, just like getting repetition, saying the same message over and over.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about the stuff that I get retargeted for constantly on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
You and your brother running around downtown somewhere with cameras in front of your faces.
Yeah.
That's the one, right? That's like the one that
yeah,
you're getting recognized.
we've done this a lot. The first video we shot was in San Diego. We were in San Diego for an event, so we walked around downtown and shot this video of could you clone yourself, or how do you clone yourself, you know? And my brother would tell this story about how I always called him and said, you know, bro, I need you to take a personality assessment, or I need to figure out like what's the secret sauce and why we work so well together so that I can go and hire that type of person. And eventually I ended up just hiring him. Right. But what I realized is that you can't replicate a person, but you can replicate the results of the person. And so that message, we recycled it over and over and started shooting these videos of us together, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, awesome. So, okay, I have to ask, how are the sharks talking about you guys on that testimonial retargeting ad? I haven't asked you because I wanted to wait till we sat down because I wanted to get the answer on camera.
Okay, so that story is, so it comes down to influencer marketing. There's this whole industry of influencer marketing where whether it's online or video or TV or radio, there's personalities that know they have a brand, they know they have a following, and they know it's worth something. And so for us, we tried to look at who are the influencers or people that would be most impactful for our audience. And of course, any of the sharks stood out as one of those things. So I had a friend who does a lot of influencer marketing and was working on something that involved him. And so we
Him is who? Sorry, I didn't even
Kevin
set it up.
O'Leary,
Like nobody has any idea what we're talking about.
So it involved him, and so we did like a paid kind of collaboration with him to get him to do a shout out. So it's like, it's where do you put, when you're a startup especially, where do you put the dollars? Where do you invest in the content you're putting out? You want it to have the biggest bang for the buck. And so something like that's an authority that you can leverage to give your brand instant trust and more recognition. As they're scrolling through Facebook or as they're scrolling on your website, it gets them to stop and say, hold on a second, they must be legit. That's super valuable. So totally recommend that.
And then you got another shark. Was both of them together? It was the same deal? Thing. And you're utilizing that as retargeting? What is that ad? Who is that playing to?
So it is, it's playing to a cold audience, actually. Okay. Yes. So we use a lookalike audience on our website, and we can get more into this if you want, but we're targeting people that are like our best customers. So the way we do it is when someone signs up for the ad, they hit a page that's like a welcome page, and we fire a pixel there to track that now they've become a customer. And initially, we were just retargeting or setting up our audience based on those people that had put in a credit card and signed up. But then what we saw is if we had a wave of bad people sign up, we were all of a sudden getting a wave of worse people that were based on the bad people. So we changed our strategy, and so now we fire off triggers or events for the Facebook pixel based on when someone is adding content and inviting users in Trainual, because then we know that they're active, we know they're actually using the system. So we use that as our targeting audience for a cold lookalike or a 1% to 5% lookalike audiences. Yeah. And then we want to capture those people's attention with something like a celebrity that they know, or a mysterious kind of video, or something that gets at the pain of what they're experiencing. And so we cache those kind of wide messages, or those authority messages, to that wide audience. And then as they hit our website and start to get retargeted, now we're talking more about the benefits of the products and the specifics and the things they already saw.
Gotcha. So once they have hit the first ad and you're doing like video retargeting, so they've seen 15 seconds of video A, and then are you following up with video B, or what's that? Are you waiting to retarget till they hit the site?
We've done it both ways.
What have you found works better?
I think it works better when they hit the site. We retarget the users on, I think it's a 7-day retargeting from being on the site. Yeah. Is converting better. We've also retargeted though based on they saw this video, so now I want to show them this one. Early on, another thing we did to leverage authority was I would hold up a book. Like the E-Myth was a big one, because we knew that anyone that had read the E-Myth had this systems and processes focus, that they would be closer to understanding the solution that Trainual offered. We wouldn't have to get education of why you need systems out
Yes.
there. You know, they get it, so now they can just sign up. So I would hold up the book E-Myth and just read a page from it, talk about how it's one of my favorite books. You know, I talked to the E-Myth organization, and like they were excited because I was kind of promoting them. And it was sort of a win-win that I'm promoting this book, they're getting some brand exposure, but then I'm also leveraging that authority to say, hey, you read this book? Well, Trainual is the next step. Here's why you should check it out. And so we used that, and once they would watch that video, then someone that had watched 10 seconds or something of that video, we would show another video that was on the same topic but a little deeper. So there's the top of funnel. You want to educate customers, just capture their attention and get them interested in your solution.
That's awesome. We just filmed a little series on that too, because it's Gary Vee based, because how he does his content is what we do.
Yeah.
So it's like the anatomy of a Gary Vee video. We go through his whole deal. So and then retargeting again with something that's still on the same wavelength, but not like we're awesome and blah blah blah. You have to give the value in some capacity.
Yeah, sure.
So are you doing? So we've talked social media content, video, that kind of stuff. Are you leveraging much written content?
Yeah. So back in the spring, I got a weekly column with Inc. magazine, and so I do my Inc. articles every month, and we brainstorm topics that are somewhat relevant to the brand, but also my personal experience as an entrepreneur for 20 years. And that is it's another great authority piece. So it's something I can put in my LinkedIn title, and people reach out. You get meetings a little bit easier when you're at conferences and things like that. So again, it's anywhere that you can borrow that brand recognition when you're a startup helps. You know, we've got all the press outlets that we've been featured on our website. We do guest blogging on other websites, HR type tools and Zapier and things that are just related for people that would work in our space. But in terms of written content, it's mostly a weekly newsletter, the Inc. column, and then just some guest posting.
Awesome. Very cool. So then the way that I'm kind of making sure that we wrap is I want people who are listening or watching to be able to do something in 48 hours. And it shouldn't require a team of 50. It's just what can you do today, tomorrow, that's realistic, that puts you ahead of where you are at today in your content strategy?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Great question. All right, so I just came back from an event called SaaS Academy with one of my coaches, Dan Martell, and he teaches this great content framework, which he has some trademark name for it, but you'll have to look it up. It's cool. But anyway, I want to share with you this because I just learned it and I thought it was really impactful. So when you're telling a story, especially on video, a 60-second video or something, you can follow this recipe to a T, and it's a great way to share a lesson or share a story on Facebook Live and Instagram, anything like that. And my challenge for everyone out here would be record some lesson, and then just share it. I don't care how good it is, just share it, because you need to get in the pattern of sharing and repeating yourself if you're ever going to dial in your message to be concise enough to really attract those customers. So the recipe, the way that you do it is first, you talk about the challenge. What's the problem? So maybe the challenge is, I can't think of anything to talk about. I don't feel like I'm an expert. I don't know what I should share. And so then you say the opportunity. Well, what if it was easy to get an endless number of topics that you could share with other people? Would that be useful for your business? Step 3, you share a personal story. For me, it really used to be hard to come up with ideas that I wanted to share because I never took the time to write those ideas down. And when I went to share something, I was starting with a blank sheet of paper. Now you give the steps, the sequence of how to come up with those ideas. So here's a few ways that you can generate content, generate ideas, so you never run out of things to share. First, when people ask you a question, like on your website or your FAQs or your chatbots, write those questions down. I had an intern come in here last week. A friend of mine's daughter that was going off to college wanted to learn about the tech industry. She asked me 15 questions, and I thought, these are great questions for content.
There you go.
So I asked her to email me those questions, and now I've got them just in a list of things that I'm going to start sharing. So leverage the questions that people ask you. Next, make sure you've got a to-do list or an Evernote or some place that you can collect those ideas whenever they come to you. So when I'm in line at Starbucks or driving or whenever I'm not supposed to be texting, I write those ideas down so that I've got this backlog of things to write about. And then when I'm at a conference and I hear other people ask great questions and I've got an idea in my head of how I would have answered that if they were asking me, I'll take a note and I'll write that thing down. So if you follow those steps, you'll start to build a backlog of ideas that you can talk about when you want to share something. So you might ask yourself, what if I run out of things to say. I've found that actually by saying things, by sharing lessons and stories, you create new stories, because I'm going to say something that gets you to ask a question that creates another topic for me to talk about. So it's really this endless stream of content once you get going. So to wrap things up, like I said, the framework is simple. You've got a challenge. I can't think of ideas. You've got an opportunity. You could probably think of ideas if you had a backlog of them. You've got a personal story about, I used to struggle with this too. And you've got the sequence of steps that you want someone to follow. So that was kind of like a meta version of how you too can produce some really simple video content and then share it out with your audience.
That is awesome. That was the most loaded version of answer to that question I've ever gotten. That was incredible. Wow. Well, thank you so much. This has been. Is there any other knowledge nuggets you want to share? I mean, I've got bombed with information, so I'm pretty stoked about.
No, I mean, when it comes to content and it comes to repurposing your content, you've got to do what's easiest for you. A lot of times with my Inc. articles, I end up starting with a 2-minute video recording of myself talking, and then I frame that later into a real article because it's easier for me to talk. So if you do audio really well, do a podcast. If you do video really well, just turn on your phone and set it up. If you do photos really well, you're great at posing or something, get a friend to take pictures. If you write really well, start a newsletter. And whatever you do really well, that's where the content should originate. But then don't forget the other 3 things. Let your content that you shoot on video turn into blog articles. Let your video get transcribed and turn into blog posts. Let your podcasts turn into show notes. All the stuff that you guys do so well, that's really what it's all about. It's about just create content in the way that's easiest for you, and then have a team that you can use to push that content out and maximize the ROI you get from it.
Yeah, because content is content, and it translates. That's awesome. Wow,
cool.
Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
It was great to catch up. I haven't really heard the full-fledged story of the Trainual experience.
Yeah,
You've been so
happy to
busy
share.
rocking out Trainual. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go do his last 10 minutes of awesomeness that he just embarked on. So you're going to have to rewind and re-listen. I'm excited too. So thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Shaina.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Content Coalition. Now, whether you're listening or watching, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and to whatever platform you're listening to it on, because you're not going to want to miss out on the incredible things that I'm learning with these amazing content marketing pros. So make sure you subscribe, and we will talk to you next week.